This will not have anything to do with the coronavirus epidemic. This is about talking to strangers. Not long ago, I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell entitled David and Goliath. I think it was a bestseller. It argued that appearances or first impressions could be deceiving and that obvious disadvantages could be advantageous if someone was undaunted and courageous enough. When I was getting that book, I noticed another, Talking to Strangers. Having read and thought about A Nation of Strangers, I was attracted to that title, so I ordered it up too. It took a while, but it finally arrived. Malcolm Gladwell writes for The New Yorker, and I think with his insightful social commentary and analysis, he is becoming something of a sage, a guru, or at least a go-to guy when it comes to contemporary cultural observation. His books are always packed with examples that illustrate his main points. Those points are not profound. In fact, they are simple and straightforward, but they are also mostly misunderstood in our society. He keeps getting it right, and we keep getting it wrong. Talking to strangers follows that pattern. He says that when we talk to strangers, we make a hash of it, and many bad outcomes are the result. He takes some time to examine Cortez and Montezuma, a classic misunderstanding with catastrophic results. Chamberlain and Hitler, a much more recent mix-up that ended badly. Jerry Sandusky showering with young men, Bernie Madoff and his investors, and Dr. Larry Nassar with his female athlete patients. In every case, Gladwell wonders how this could have happened, and in each instance, it's because people completely misinterpreted the words of a stranger. Today we are now thrown into contact all the time with those whose assumptions, perspectives, and backgrounds are different from our own. Gladwell writes, talking to strangers is about why we are so bad at that act of translation. There's a long section on spies and why they are so difficult to detect. It's because most people tend to believe what others are saying, even when they're telling lies, even if they're not very good at lying. It's called the default to truth. We have a tendency to trust. We may have some doubts about a person, but are there enough doubts to turn on them? Usually we think not. We give them the benefit of the doubt. Same with priests and coaches who molest their young players. We don't want to believe it. The theater has what it calls the willing suspension of disbelief. Gladwell says we usually employ a willing commitment of belief. An examination of TV sitcoms shows that the actors appear facially in concurrence to the way they are behaving. Gladwell calls that transparency. He says real life is not like that. Frequently, people don't reveal in their appearance what they are feeling. He writes, we think we can easily see into the hearts of others based on the flimsiest of clues. We jump at the chance to judge others. We would never do that to ourselves, of course. We are nuanced and complex and enigmatic. But the stranger is easy. If I can convince you of one thing in this book, let it be this: strangers are not easy. Like trained CIA agents, poker players like to think that they can read people, spot the tells. Gladwell would say no. They might know the cards and the odds and the betting cues, but it might cost you big time if you were certain you could read a stranger. The heart of the book is about police stopping civilians, mostly driving in cars. Kansas City was fighting a losing battle against crime until it started a new program in a very small, high-crime area of aggressively stopping vehicles and looking for drugs and guns, needles in the haystack. They were successful. Crime rates fell, and this tactic spread to other areas. Unfortunately, certain key specific factors were overlooked, and it was misapplied, and that led to trouble, bad practice, stop and frisk, causing terrible widespread social woe. Cops were seen as harassing citizens, targeting them, especially young black males. Ferguson, Illinois erupted, not just because of the death of Michael Brown, but because they had suffered under the regime of being stopped for the slightest of reasons and then thoroughly searched. The police had been trained to do this. Stop for any reason, then do not default to truth. Instead, be completely suspicious. Black people came to feel that the police were, without any provocation, picking on them, and by extension, shooting them, and they had had enough. They wanted to push back. Michael Brown wanted to push back. They did. And so they did. 17 days of riots, cops shot, Black Lives Matter, massive mistrust. All from reading strangers. Locally, we had a case where a campus cop stopped a perfect suspect, a low-level drug pusher with all sorts of red flags. Instead of a tidy collar, this resulted in tragedy. The suspect tried to glide away, the cop panicked and shot him in the head. Opinions on this were firm, heated, and varied. The cop was tried twice, was vilified, and fired. The dead man's family received millions of dollars. I get it. Malcolm Gladwell, even when the stranger should be easy, when they seem easy, strangers are not easy. And strangers are everywhere, and it can be scary when we are thrown into contact with them. We all depend on the kindness of strangers, or not, and it's really just a flip of the coin.